everyone. Welcome to the Stream of Art podcast, where we chat openly about creativity, personal development, and building a career in the arts. I'm Michelle Monette.
And I'm Robyn Lester.
And today, in episode 29, we will each be doing a bit of a deep dive on a challenge that we're currently working our way through. But first, we're going to do our little intro sort of 3-question check-in. We've made a bit of a change to it. So we will each be sharing a win, a fun or interesting thing, and something we appreciate. So Robyn, you want to kick us off?
Mm-hmm. So when I'm back to working full-time, I'm not sure if I mentioned that last time on the podcast. And one of the things I'm trying to challenge myself to do, because previously I spent a lot of time just like vegetating after work, which I think is probably a pretty common problem for people. It's like the workday is a little bit depleting, and then it can be hard to find the energy to do activities or, I don't know, get off the couch. At least I hope that's not just a me problem. Anyway,
it's not. I've definitely had that before.
Yeah. So I've been really kind of trying to make an effort to like get myself out of the house in some way after my workday, and I've been successfully doing that, and that is a pretty big win.
That's a huge win, yeah.
Because it is very tempting to just, well, it's hard to like when your day has been like stressful or anxiety inducing, which most of my days are just by nature of how my brain works.
Yeah.
My first instinct after work is to numb by watching shows that I've watched a million times, right? Like those comfort shows.
Yeah.
But when your life just becomes that pattern of working and then numbing your brain with things you've watched a million times, like life stops feeling rich pretty quickly. Yeah. And I think I had gotten to that point. So anyways, just making that effort to like push myself to resist that kind of comfort zone. And it's been, I don't know, it feels good, right? It just feels like much more balanced.
Yeah.
And then interesting thing, and this kind of goes along with what I was just talking about, I've also been trying to read more and watch less TV generally. So I'm trying to make it so like my reading is my go-to escapism. I just think, I don't know, I think it's healthier for the brain.
I agree. Yeah.
Yeah. But I just finished the first book in a series, and it's a like a age 9 to 12 series. So it might not be for everyone, but I like reading that kind of those books sometimes. It's the Nevermore series. I don't actually know. The first book is called Nevermore. I don't know if the whole series is called Nevermore, but yeah. Anyways, anyone who's like interested in that sort of age range for books, which like Harry Potter falls into that age range technically. It was a fun book. Like it was.
The name rings a bell.
Yeah, and even though the audience for it was quite young, like it didn't feel like you were reading a kid's book. And there's some of the same elements that I like about Harry Potter in this book. So anyways, just a little interesting book recommendation. Yeah. And then something that I have been appreciating or / grateful for, I think just the fact that like at the end of my workday, I actually just have the time to do whatever I feel like doing.
Mm-hmm.
Like I'm very aware that there's lots of people where that's not the case, where their time is taken by, not taken, but that sounds like, makes it sound really negative, but their time is spent caring for children.
Yeah. It is stolen by their children.
Yeah. I don't want to make it. Yeah. I mean, that's how I would feel if I had kids, but that's why I don't have kids. Yeah. And just realizing like how lucky I am that I even have the problem of like, oh, what am I going to do after work?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's a pretty good problem to have.
Yeah.
Like, what can I do with all this time?
Yeah. And I was messaging a friend the other day, and she was asking how it was going. And I was telling her how, like, you know, I've been starting to do more things, and like, it's been good to kind of break that pattern of just like finishing the workday and like sitting and watching TV. And as I'm typing this out, I'm like, she has like a newborn at home and a toddler. Oh, and I'm like, I put in brackets, like, I realize that to you, this probably sounds like the dream.
Yeah.
But I think the thing is that when your whole life is that,
Yeah.
It stops, everything in moderation, essentially. Yeah.
Awesome. Those are all very nice, positive things.
Yeah. Look at me go.
Yeah.
Embracing positivity.
Yeah.
That doesn't seem like me.
Who are you? What have you done with Robyn?
Where's
Freya,
negative
run.
Robyn?
This is not your mother.
Yeah. Your turn.
All right. Okay, my win. So my win was actually more of like a realization with regards to my anxiety. And that is that it is a lot better these days. I've been actually actively taking some steps to try to just improve my relationship to anxiety and learn how to manage it and work through it. And so a lot of it's just some mental stuff when, I have some kind of an anxious thought come up. I have some tools I can use to sort of dismantle that. I have some things that help me just with my nervous system, just to kind of like breathe and kind of get back into my body so I'm not in my head so much and starting to spiral. So I just kind of realized this week I've actually been doing a lot better on that front. So that feels pretty promising. My fun and interesting thing, of course, is the Bent Knee concert. That was incredible. It's the first time I've seen them as a 4-piece, and man, they sounded just like as tight as ever. The sound was so full, so good. They all looked like they were having such a good time too, which...
Did they used to be 5?
There were 6 of them before.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah, they had Ben Levin on guitar and Jessica Kion on bass, and they both left once they decided they didn't want to tour anymore.
Yeah.
And so the rest of them carried on as a 4-piece, and it just and I mean, I had no doubt they would sound amazing, but it was just nice to actually hear them, up front, up close and personal. So that was awesome. And something I appreciate right now, I have a ton of appreciation for Mel Robbins. She's actually been a huge part of why I'm doing so much better with my anxiety, because I've been using her 5-second rule to help me deal with that and get things done. And just, she does a lot of stuff with, mindset and all of that. And for anybody who doesn't know who Mel Robbins is, I know I've talked about her before, but, you can check her out. She's a speaker, an author, and a podcaster. And yeah, I've listened to the audiobook version of both of her books, The 5-Second Rule and The High Five Habit, and they're both excellent. The High Five Habit especially, I got a lot out of. I just finished that a couple of days ago. And yeah, I highly recommend, because she's had a hugely positive impact on my life recently.
Is the High Five Habit about going around and giving everyone high fives?
It's about giving yourself a high five.
Oh, I like my version better. I think it's more entertaining.
You're just like going around. Well, I think maybe if you give yourself a high five, you'll be more inclined to want to give others high five and spread that positivity.
It's interesting that you bring that up, because this new thing I'm trying is like when something sort of negative happens in my life, I'm trying to counter that by like putting positivity out there. Whereas before I would just crumble under the weight of
I hear ya.
all that is wrong in the world.
Team crumble.
Yeah. I don't know how that was related.
No, it is. It is, because it's Mel is big on just learning how to deal with your challenges and like learning how to recognize that you have it in you to handle things like that and to be able to turn things around and that's a huge. It's such an important skill to develop, being able to stand in the center of something negative and choose something positive. Like, that's a practice. It's a muscle that has to be exercised.
It's a tricky one. And this has come up for me because I realized my barrier there was that you experience something negative or whatever. And then, yes, you have the choice to kind of move forward in a more positive direction. But to me, I felt like to move forward in a positive direction is almost like dismissing, like invalidating the negative thing that, you know what I mean? Like, I had a really hard time, because it's like, if I move forward in a positive direction, it's like that bad thing still happened and still impacted me, and still like, I don't want to just dismiss that. Like, so I've learned that I have to kind of like validate that, like, yeah, that was a frustrating thing, or that thing really hurt or whatever, but I'm going to let it go now. But like that validation part is really key before I can just kind of let it go.
Yeah, I think you're right on. Because I've definitely struggled with that before, where I would in the past just immediately turn to positivity. And what it meant was that I was shoving down all these things that I really needed to deal with.
Yeah.
And so over the last, several months, I've been doing a lot of going back and like dealing with all of that stuff that I shoved down. And it meant I had a lot of time where I was really just hanging out in that negativity, in that space that, I mentioned in the last episode about kind of clinging to the past, pulling the past into the present with me. And I think that was an important part of the process, but definitely as I'm getting to a point where I feel like I did the work I needed to do to shake some of that stuff loose and to heal from a lot of it, I'm recognizing the value that positivity plays in moving forward, and that it's all about keeping it in balance and just sort of doing what you need for each phase of your life. So like right now I'm feeling like I did that work. It's time to move forward. So
right.
Awesome. Let's jump into the main topic of the day.
Do you want to kick it off? I should warn you that I was at a party yesterday with like 15 children, and I think that's and adults too. It wasn't just me with 15 children. Let's be clear.
It's like, is it a party, or did somebody rope you into babysitting and just not pay you? They're like, hey, Robyn, do you want to come to a party?
And it's just me. No, all of their parents were present and some of their grandparents. But like, I think I'm realizing now that I'm in one of those, I think I'm tired from that still. And
okay, yeah.
I'm talking, but I'm not actually registering what I'm saying until a few seconds after I say it. So just, this is going to be a fun one, folks.
Yeah. I'm also coming off of a couple of weeks where I wasn't on my usual schedule. So today's the first day I got up with my alarm at 6 o'clock.
Oh, so man. Okay, so we're both out of it. I love when we're both out of it. It's the best.
Yeah, we're both positive. We're both out of it.
Yeah.
It's going to be great.
Our brains haven't clicked on yet.
I love that for us.
Yeah.
Positive and not really here.
Yeah.
Just totally dissociated.
Maybe that's the secret to a happy life.
Yeah. So I'll do my best to keep this from getting too rambly, because I'm still sort of trying to organize my thoughts on this. So,
I love that too. Talking to figure things out. That's where I'm at, girl.
I know. I signed on to Notion this morning because I always like to sort of take a peek and see like what notes you've written. It's like neither of us had notes, because like in my defense, I've been writing in a physical
Me
journal.
too.
So
that's what I've been doing as well, Michelle.
I'm okay. Is that a real journal, or is that just a journal in your brain?
It is a journal in my brain.
That's fair. I've been writing on that journal too.
Yeah.
My brain journal.
At some point, well, I'll get into this when I talk about my challenge. At some point, I will get back into like a routine of things.
Yeah.
At some point.
Yeah.
I give myself no deadlines.
I think that's the way to do it. That's something Mel Robbins talks about, is how it's important to let go of the when. Like, don't worry about when something happens.
Yeah.
Like, or just do the work to get there and to prepare yourself, like in terms of your mindset, your actions, your habits. She's big on habits. And just like take the when out of the equation. Don't be like trying to make anything happen by a certain time. Just do the work and just keep moving forward. So here's my challenge. It is my life. So it seems like, whoa, okay, that's a big challenge, but
I feel like everyone's challenge is their life.
That's literally, yeah.
Let's unpack this a little bit.
Yeah. I'm like, I don't know if I should go that big and just say that this is what I'm trying to fix right now. But this is what I'm trying to fix. And I feel like this is definitely the kind of headspace a lot of people our age are probably in, as we're trying to figure things out as we creep ever closer to middle age.
Oh my gosh. This is going to be one of those uplifting episodes, isn't it? Yes,
it will be. It'll turn around. Yeah, so and this is something to anybody who's been listening to this podcast, it probably comes as no surprise that I have not been happy with how my life is going. Like, I definitely feel like I want more and I can do more. And I've been kind of waffling a little bit. Like, I've been making some changes and, trying some things, but like, it feels like nothing was really sticking. again, sort of like to add to what I said earlier, I think all of that emotional work I did this year was really important. Like taking the time to just kind of sit with my emotions, sit with my past, journal, cry, get stuff out of my system. I think it was so important because I think that's going to be what lets me actually build a proper foundation moving forward. It was just kind of, I was just trying to build stuff on like quicksand, and it just, there wasn't enough. So I feel like I am moving forward with a bit of a better internal foundation. But I was sort of inspired by our conversation last time. I mentioned, I think once or maybe even twice through that episode, how I've done a great job of getting my musical life together. And this relates to the blog I wrote recently about how I healed my experience with music, my relationship with music. And I mentioned, like, I do such a great job when it comes to music, but I haven't done any of that and applied it to my life. And then it dawned on me this past week, like, why don't I just apply that stuff, the same process, to my life so I can heal my life and actually build a life that I want to live? So that got me thinking a lot this week. I've spent a lot of time just thinking and writing in my journal and kind of trying to outline what is it that made the process of healing my relationship with music so effective. And so beyond like the different things that I did, so that was changing my mindset and my identity. That was, getting clear about what I wanted. It was being more intentional, being better with organization and systems and all of that, routines, and then changing my relationship to discipline while also being disciplined and taking the action I needed to. So I'm like, okay, if I can take that same framework and just apply it to all of these different areas of my life. And what I did was I wrote out the different areas of my life. So I broke down my life into these like different parts. So I have music and musical life, which right now is fine. So I'm not going to be turning my attention there beyond just maintaining where I'm at and like continuing to write and all of that, because obviously that's still important to me. But I really want to turn my attention to some of the other areas that just need more work. One of which is my career, my health, my relationships, my financial situation, hobbies and interests, housing, and just sort of organizational routine systems and all of that. So some of this is, again, still early stages. Some of these might get grouped together as I do more work in these areas and as I break them down more, but that's kind of what I have so far. And so I was just looking at each part and trying to figure out like what needs to be my priority right now. And career is one of those. Yeah. So that's got to be the big thing right now. Music is like it's the kind of thing I'm always going to be working on, but it can't get as much of my attention right now because I have to be putting my focus in the career stuff.
Yeah.
And then I also made a mark for health just because that's like an ongoing thing. But again, I'm in pretty good shape there. I'll come back to that and talk about what I'm doing a little bit later, but that is something I'm thinking about. And then the other stuff is stuff I'm also going to have to work on. And I think some of it's related too. Again, this is what I meant when I said a lot of it groups together. So I think as I'm starting to work in these different areas, it'll help reveal where I need to then shift my attention. So maybe I go, oh, this is where I'm stuck. So I'm going to go and spend some time down here because this is actually the thing that's getting in my way.
Well, that's it. Like it's kind of looking at these list of things and like which one makes sense to kind of work on first. Because I'm just thinking like with health, for example, particularly mental health, if your career is rocky and your housing isn't stable, that's going to impact your mental health, right? So get those two things kind of like settled first, and then you'll find that it trickles down, like the positive effects trickle down in the other 100%. Areas. So it's really smart to kind of like look at this and think, okay, like what does it make sense to figure out first? What's going to have the most impact on these other areas as well? This reminds me of that wheel exercise. Have you done that? Where you kind of like, there's like a pie, slices of pie, and then it's like you have hobbies, work, health, like different sort of, and then you give it a score on 1 to 10. Yeah. And the idea is that, and you draw a line at where you're at, kind of thing. And so the idea is that it should be a circle, like if everything's kind of equal.
I did that. I did that in the artist way.
Yeah. So that would be that. Yeah. You should add a slice though to your pie where it's just music, because I feel like that one would be really high, but then you start to see where the other things are in comparison, right?
It would be like at the edge of the circle, and then everything else is like around the center. No, that is actually helpful. And you know what? I think Notion now has graphs. I wonder if I could try to like graph. Have you played around with that?
No, it popped up and I was like, go away.
Oh, I'm curious. I'm curious to come back to that. I'm like, put a pin in that Notion, because I'm doing stuff right now. I'm probably going to need some kind of a graph. But yeah, wondering if I could do like a Notion style like life chart,
right?
And then I could sort of update it as I go to see how I'm doing. But yeah, like it's exactly like what you said, and it's so interesting because like I know this, and this is something I've been thinking a lot about relative to building a musical life. Like all this stuff I talk about, all the stuff I want to be doing with like my music coaching. And that is this idea that you cannot separate life from music. And that would extend to art as well. So like how, and this phrase has been popping up into my head, how I show up for myself in my life is how I show up for my music. And how I show up for my music is also reflective of how I show up for myself in my life.
Right.
And I've been showing up for my music like, and I definitely have made some improvements. I will give myself credit there. Like a lot of the changes I've made that helped me heal that relationship were actually unrelated to music. It was a lot of other things, and changing some habits and changing my mindset, definitely. So like I have done things, but it sort of hit a certain point where it started to get really uncomfortable. And so I'm like, well, the music stuff's very easy for me. That's easy. Yeah. I don't mind being uncomfortable there, but some of the other stuff just got left behind. So, you know, it's something that I've been sort of preaching in my mind as something I would say to other people. Like you can't look at your experience with music and try to treat it separately. Like you need a holistic approach where you look at your entire life. But I'm like, I haven't been doing that. Or I have been, but like, again, kind of like on the outskirts. Like I haven't really been getting in there and like really just tearing up the dirt. It's like trying to plant a garden and you don't bother trying to like do anything with the soil. You just kind of like stick some plants in there and you're like, I'm doing it. I'm planting a garden, but like and then they all die and you're like, I don't understand. It's because you haven't like tended the soil. I don't know if that's accurate.
You just like put the plant on top of the soil without actually digging a hole. And you don't water it. You're like, you'll figure it out.
You're like, good luck. Yeah, and that's kind of what I was trying to do is I didn't actually get to the foundation of like what's going on. And yeah, so exactly like what you said, I'm starting to recognize just where things are really linking and how if I want to improve this one area of my life, I actually have to improve this area and all of that. So it is helping me to just get clear about like my next steps. But ultimately what I'd like to do is just apply my build a musical life process to my life. It's just going to look a little bit different, obviously, because the focus isn't music. But, you know, I'm going to be doing a lot to work on my mindset, which I am doing right now. And again, that's actually going really well. I'm going to be getting really clear about what I want, which I think is an area where I'm doing pretty well there. Like I know what I want, but I think it'll really help for me to like sit down and write it out. And then something that Mel Robbins talks about a lot is, you know, looking for like the steps. She's like, figure out what your next small steps are to get you there. And then, you know, then imagine yourself doing that. So using this sort of like visualization tool to like imagine yourself doing those small steps to get you there. So for me, like imagining like what it's going to be like sitting in front of a camera and recording a video, or, you know, going out and playing a show, which is something I haven't done for a while, but I'm feeling the itch to do that, or whatever it is. So
what is the benefit of that visualization?
So your brain can't tell the difference between something that's actually happening and something that you're imagining happening. This is like a common tool that is used with like athletes. And I know it's been used with musicians as well, where you imagine yourself doing the thing and it triggers the part of your brain that would be triggered if you were actually doing the thing. So like if I imagine sitting down in a chair, the same part of my brain that's activated when I sit down in a chair is getting activated when I just think about it. This is something I read in a book called Peak Performance as well. They talk about how all of that functions. So yeah, it's just like getting really clear about what I want and then making it feel real by breaking it down into the things I can do to get there, and then imagining myself doing them and then doing them. And what Mel Robbins explains is that this helps you to actually do the thing. So if you're like wanting to train for a marathon, she says, don't imagine yourself crossing the finish line. Imagine yourself waking up really early and it's cold and it's raining and you put on your running shoes anyway, you put on your running gear and you get out that door and you run and you're tired and your earphones die so you have nothing to listen to. And she said just being able to see yourself doing that helps you to become the person who needs to do that to get the thing that you want. And then you do that thing and then it enforces it. It always comes down to the action.
Because to me, it's like if your brain doesn't know the difference between what is real and what you're just imagining, to me, like, so if I like visualize myself going for a run, then I feel like I'd be less inclined to actually do it because my brain just imagined that I did do it and it doesn't know any difference. So and I mean, why would it do it again?
And you'd have to try that to see if that's what happens for you. But she's like, Mel Robbins is big on research. So she's like, this is what all the science says. So I'm like,
oh, interesting. It's interesting because this reminds me of like when I did script writing and one of my profs was actually saying like, it's better not to talk too much about what your ideas, like what you're gonna write, because sometimes that will actually deter you from doing it. Like if you already tell the story, that need to put that story on paper and get it out there has already been fulfilled through the act of telling it. It's slightly different, but it just for whatever reason reminded me of that cautionary tale.
Yeah.
So it's interesting because it's like this is kind of what Mel Robbins is arguing or suggesting is kind of counter to that idea.
Yeah, and I think there's something to be said for not saying too much before you're actually doing something. Because yeah, it's I'm definitely guilty of that too, where I love to talk about doing something and then I don't do it. Yeah. I think this is another brain thing where I think when you talk about doing something, that can release like the same chemicals you'd get if you actually did the thing.
Do it. Yes. Yeah. Yes.
Because especially if you're telling somebody, oh, I'm going to do this thing. And they're like, oh, that's awesome. And then you get like the chemical boost of like, oh, they thought this thing I'm talking about doing is awesome. But then you don't do the thing because you're like, your brain's like, I did it. I basically did it. So yeah, I would be interesting to know how that interacts with that concept. And maybe it's one of those things that comes down to just kind of knowing yourself and knowing, not to get sucked into that trap. Like I'm definitely better about not getting too ahead of myself with the things I talk about. I mean, like with this podcast, I deliberately talk about things kind of in the early stages because I'm like, I'm not committed to anything yet. Yeah. But yeah, I'm definitely somebody who falls into that camp. So this is what I think part of why I'm excited to try this. Like maybe this will help me actually close the gap between the things I say I want to do and actually doing those things. So yeah, I think I also have a lot of mental blocks and all of that I got to work on, which is part of why I'm doing so much work on mindset. So mindset is not actually part of the process that I outline for building musical life, but it is an important part of it. I think when I eventually write my book on the topic. Oh no, I shouldn't talk about writing the book. It'll never happen. That's not true. It's gonna happen.
Well, you can talk about it in general terms. Just don't give us a chapter by chapter breakdown, or else you'll never write it.
Introduction.
Yeah.
I know I'm gonna write a book. Writing a book is one of those things from the time I was like a teenager. I'm like, I feel like I have a book in me, and now I actually know what it's gonna be about. Anyways, I digress. So I know when I do write that book, I have a rough idea of what I want the structure to be. I'm going to have a part for each of the different parts of the process, but there'll be a whole section on mindset because without the right mindset, you can't actually, I think it's very difficult to actually go through the process because it's a lot of work and you have to put a lot of thought and energy into it. So yeah, so the actual main part or the main three parts are vision. So clarifying your vision, and then it's planning and preparing, and then taking action. So I'm thinking in terms right now of like just trying to get clear on all like what I want my life to look like in all these different areas. Yeah. Like to write out a clear description of like, here's what I would like it to be. And then from there to sort of plot out. And this is then where I would move into the next phase, which is the planning and preparing phase. And this is also going to be where like organization lives, systems, schedules, routines, because this is like how I'm organizing my time and my attention and my energy so that I can actually get there. And so that's where I sit down, I sort of think about, okay, well, here are the things I need to do to get all of these in order. And then the action stage is just like doing these things. So I'm in this phase right now where it's still all pretty loose. This is actually why I'm not back on my usual routine, because I'm like, I think I need to put that down. I had the thought that, I think part of why I've been struggling so much to get things done is because I'm existing in a routine that served me for a long time, but I need to do something different. Because this routine is what got me here. And if I want to go somewhere else, something has to change. Obviously, the stuff that's working really well, I'm going to carry with me. But I just need some time to, without a deadline, without this, like, I'm going to try to figure it out this week or within the next 2 weeks. I'm going to take as long as it takes to figure this out and then get moving in this new direction.
And it also seems to me, and maybe I'm wrong, because but from what you've described, like from what I know of your routine, it's very much structured around serving that musical piece of the pie.
Mm-hmm.
So if you're looking at the pie as a whole, your routine is naturally going to have to shift to serve all the different pieces, right?
Yeah, exactly. And again, I have to, a lot of this is just mindset. Like it's about being okay not letting the music go, but reducing the amount of time I'm spending, or, just changing my musical priorities, going like, well, okay, what's the most important thing I could be working on right now musically? And then doing that and spending less time so that I can get the career portion going. So rather than having like this, 3 to 4 hour stretch of music time, do 1 to 2 hours. So I'm still like keeping that momentum going. But then I'm giving myself 3 to 4 hours of career time every day, beyond like obviously the stuff I do like with the teaching and stuff, but like stuff that's like focused on getting my career up and off the ground and all of that. The way I've been treating it is kind of like this afterthought, but I'm like, it can't be. If I want to actually make progress and craft this career that's meaningful to me, I have to put in the time. It needs more of my time and attention.
Yeah.
And it doesn't mean I have to let everything else go. It's just about turning down the burners. It's like if I have everything on the stove, like I can't have everything burning super hot.
Prioritizing.
Yeah, exactly. So,
yeah.
And that is definitely something I've talked about before. I really struggle with prioritizing things.
It's so funny because it's easy to look at someone else's life and be like, here's where you need to prioritize to get to where you're going. Mm-hmm. But when you're living your life, everything feels important.
Mm-hmm.
And it can be very challenging because you're working in your own head. And so within your own head, there's fears that are getting in your way of moving forward in certain directions. And they're fears that are subconscious. You're not even aware of them. So to be strategic and to prioritize is actually extremely challenging to do when you're in your own head.
Yeah.
And like to do for yourself. And that's probably why there's so many life coaches and career coaches and business coaches, because it's a very hard thing. It's very hard to be real with yourself.
Mm-hmm.
It takes, and I don't know if we really ever can be, because we have our own messages that we give ourselves and we have our own blind spots. And it's hard to call ourselves out on our own nonsense.
Yeah.
It's a skill. It's very, very tricky.
Yeah, I agree with you 100%. And that is definitely where I'm getting tripped up.
And I think we can tell ourselves, we're really good at creating stories for ourselves and creating stories that, like, I've fallen into this so many times where it's like, oh, this is the right thing. I'm definitely like, I've got my priorities set straight right now. And then 2 years passes and you look back and it's like, that was ridiculous to do it in that order. Like, why did I do that?
Yeah. Hindsight is 20/20. I think that was maybe a realization I had, that I need to treat myself the way I would treat a coaching client, because that is one of the directions I want to go in, is coaching people on their musical lives. But like I said, by extension, it's going to be a little bit of life coaching as well, because you can't separate the two, and I'm trying to sort of use myself as a bit of a test subject. And also I wonder if part of the reason why I'm struggling to put myself forward to do the stuff I really want to do is because I know I'm not really embodying what I talk about fully. I am
you
in
have
the
that
musical
kind of
sense.
imposter syndrome a little bit. 'Cause it's like, who am I to coach someone when like I still
so much of my life
trying to coach myself.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah, and so that's really the kind of the role I'm sort of taking is like I'm almost trying to split myself so that I have like the coach version of me who can say you got to get this done. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, just do it. And that's been really helpful is just being my own coach. Not to say that I won't ever get a coach at some point. I probably will. I'm actually very interested in getting coaching and getting lessons and things. Like I definitely know I would benefit from some external feedback. But right now I'm just doing it on my own, just testing my process in the context of every other area of my life.
So you're kind of practicing what you preach, which 100%. I wonder,
yeah.
I'm just thinking like I think that might be one of the reasons why I haven't gone forward with teaching any kind of workshops because, you know, like all of the ideas center around helping people kind of tap into their creativity and get excited about making art. And it's very hard to do that when like in my own life, I haven't been making art. Like I have a hard time tapping into that. And so it's like, who am I to be teaching this thing to other people when I can't even show up all the time? But I don't know if you need to be living it to teach it.
Well, I think you do if you want to be taken seriously. And more importantly, if you want to take yourself seriously. I think there has to be like, you have to walk the walk as well as talk the talk. But I think it's important to recognize that generally the stuff we teach the best is the stuff we struggle with.
Exactly.
So I think it's important to be open about the things that you're challenged by. I mean, the whole reason that my whole Build a Musical Life process exists is because I struggled for so many years with music and with my relationship with it. And I wasn't seeing the progress I wanted, like for all the reasons that I listed out in my blog post. You know, this process exists because I had a problem and I decided I wanted to solve it. And so I think it's okay to still struggle with those things, but I think you have to some degree, be actually like the embodiment of what you're trying to teach. Because otherwise, to me, it just feels like hypocrisy. You know, if I'm going around saying like, you really have to look at your whole life and how you engage with your life and how that relates to how you engage with music, but I'm here like engaging with music so I don't have to pay attention to the rest of my life. People can smell a rat. People know when there is, and it's not like an intentional deception. You're not trying to trick people into thinking like, you know, like you have all the answers. And it's not like that. I think, you know, but there is, I think in myself, this recognition that I'm not being who I need to be able to like fully step into the stuff I'm trying to teach, the stuff I'm trying to share.
I guess I have I guess I'm a bit skeptical because when I see people who like Mel Robbins, like Cal Newport, like, and you know, they put these ideas out there that are great ideas, but I always am kind of skeptical. I'm like, do you really show up in your life all the time like that? Like, I just don't believe it.
Yeah, and I don't think they do. That's the thing.
Yeah,
they both openly talk about the things that they find really challenging. You know, Cal Newport talks about how he didn't sign up for social media because he's like, he knew what that would do to his brain. He's like, I don't have the willpower to work against that. And Mel Robbins is like super open about all the challenges she has. Like that's why she has all these things she talks about is because she was trying to help. And she's like, yeah, I still struggle with this stuff. So I don't think it's about being perfect. It's about, but I think there is a certain degree of having to like put those things into practice. And I think maybe that's what I'm trying to get at is like, I'm not really putting this stuff into practice.
Gotcha.
In the other area of my life. I have no expectations about being perfect. I know I'm going to struggle with these things. Like I am who I am. And I'm going to just always have certain things that are a challenge. But I hope to use these tools that I've developed and these strategies to improve in those areas and to constantly move forward. That's the thing is like, you know, it's always about the progress. I think what I need is more self-respect. And it's been very hard to respect myself when I'm not living in alignment with the things I'm talking about fully.
Yeah.
Like in some ways I definitely am, but in other like very glaring to me ways I'm not. And that's, I think, been part of my internal struggle, is that there's this, beyond even just like sort of general imposter syndrome, I just know that I was falling short of who I need to be able to do those things for myself.
Right. Like you're kind of projecting this image of yourself that doesn't really reflect how you're actually functioning.
Which is something I was guilty of for years. Like I was so afraid of ever letting anybody see my faults, my flaws, because I was so busy trying to cultivate this image of like having everything together.
Yeah.
And then people would make note on that, like, oh, it's so cool how you do this and blah blah blah, and of course you do. And so I had this image being projected back. Exactly. And so it for a long time I just couldn't tap into like the real me, because I was like, but I've done all this work to make other people believe that, because I needed to be perfect, I needed to be flawless. Once I had that realization, I'm like, I'm just doing the same thing again. I want people to see me a certain way, but I'm not actually being that. And so I have that cognitive dissonance where it's like, I talk about these things and I write about these things and these ideas. And yes, I am talking about these things and writing about these things partly because this is where I struggle and I am trying to work through that, but I wasn't really doing the work. Like, I think it's one thing if you're doing the work and you're struggling, or even if you're just going through a rough time and you're struggling, but you get back into it. But I was like, I wasn't really doing the stuff I needed to do.
Yeah. So if you're going to kind of be pitching these ideas to other people, you need to be willing to actually follow these ideas, whatever, execute on these ideas as well, and acknowledge. I think this is the big key because for me, one of my key values is authenticity. Mm-hmm. And honesty. And I think I have a lot of respect when someone acknowledges, it's like, here's this kind of idea that I put out in the world in terms of self-development or whatever. And I'm failing at it right now.
Yeah.
And I think that's there's nothing wrong with that.
No, of course not. Yeah. And again, that ties into this idea that, we are best suited to teach the stuff that challenges us. And it's like, yeah, it's still hard. It's still hard to do these things. I still find it challenging sometimes to do some of the things I've been working on for years. And you just like, yeah, it is. And I think that is really helpful because it lets people know that they don't have to get it perfect. Yeah. They don't have to flip a switch and then suddenly have, oh, this thing is going to always work and it's always going to be easy. And it's like, it's not. It's, it's always going to be a challenge, and some days are more challenging than others. But I think as long as you keep coming back to like the fundamentals, it kind of keeps you moving forward. So yeah, that's what I'm trying to do is just start to embody these ideas within the rest of my life. Again, I'm doing a great job on the music front. Like, I have no complaints about where my music is right now, but I'm also in this process. I do want to have some time where I really think about, like, could I be doing it better? Because there's always room for improvement. So I do suspect that there will be some changes to what I'm doing musically, but overall, like, I'm happy with the direction that's going. So I do feel like a certain degree of confidence about using this process for the rest of my life.
Right.
So yeah. So I have like a breakdown of all the parts too. So this is something maybe we can come back to at another point. Maybe we can each do like we'll do like an update episode maybe. Mm-hmm. And then I can sort of give you some more details about like the specifics and all of that, because I'm still sort of sorting that out. But, at this point I'm sort of moving around between doing some, like, writing down some ideas and sort of getting clear about what I need to do, and also just like taking some kind of action to improve in these areas, to move me forward. So I've built out my journaling practice so it's a little more robust. There's a little bit more to help pull stuff out of me to get me to do these things. I'm trying to add yoga back into my routine just because because I've been having a lot of trouble with my back. I've been quite stiff, and that's something that's definitely been missing. So just these little things, just, this has really helped me beat a lot of the impulsive habits I was having creep back into my experience, where I was compulsively checking my email and going and checking stuff on YouTube and that stuff, that's always a sign. I should have like a little red siren I hit when that starts happening and just goes off. It's like something is going on with you. You don't do this when things are going well.
Right.
Just being able to step into this almost like this new next level of me where I feel like, okay, let's get this stuff tackled. All that stuff has just fallen away. It's like not even on my mind. It's just not a non-issue. So that's been really great too, just making these little things. I'm also doing a lot of reading. That's my like default activity when I just feel like I just want to do something. So I haven't even touched my video game in maybe a couple weeks. Sorry, Baldur's Gate. I'll come back to you eventually, but it's reading time now. Yeah, and so just like trying to make these little adjustments. So balancing like, so I'm not getting trapped in like, I have to plan everything stage. I'm like planning action, because action is ultimately like the most important part of the process, because that's going to inform what my vision looks like. That's what gives me that information. It also gives me some feedback as far as what is working with my organization and all of that. And so I'm going to be doing a lot, I think, over the next however many months, doing more stuff in Notion, getting like things in my physical space sorted out, which is, the apartment's actually kind of a mess right now, but it's like that good kind of mess where I'm just shaking things up and cleaning things up. So like parts of the apartment are looking really great and other parts are a disaster, but it's like, I'm kind of trying to just embrace the process and like be okay with things being
all over the place.
Being a little bit chaotic.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's it. That's where I'm at this point. Project Fix My Life.
Oh my God. Well, it's kind of interesting because like, yeah, I think we're in different spaces a bit. I'm in this kind of space where I want to actually reject the idea of fixing anything, because I'm just kind of, I think I'm a little bit just off that idea right now and just kind of drained by the idea. I've realized like, and I don't know when this started happening. I suspect it probably started happening not at the beginning of COVID, but I think probably a year into it or whatever. I just realized like and this kind of circles back to my wins and that conversation. But I realized that a lot of my life has been feeling very flat. And things that would usually energize me or make me feel excited, like I just for a long time I've been feeling like I'm just going through the motions, which I think, I mean, that is a symptom, like that would be a depressive symptom. I realize that, and I suspect there's been like various depressive episodes that I've been going through, but it's to a point now where it just almost feels like that's just, I've lost the ability completely to feel emotions that are positive. So like I'll feel anxious, I'll feel stressed, I'll feel sad, I'll feel like or angry, like I feel those emotions, but the emotions on the other side, like the excitement or like happiness, joy, playfulness, like those are flattened, and activities that used to inspire those emotions just aren't doing it, because the negative emotions are just like they're seeping into everything. And so I've been trying to, well, I haven't really actively been trying, but I just haven't had the energy for anything. Like I haven't had the energy. I haven't looked at Notion forever. I know that like in the winter, I was super excited. I felt like I had a new routine and like Notion was helping me kind of stick to that. And yeah, it felt like I was progressing in a way that was sustainable. And now I'm just like, it makes me feel sick, just the idea of opening it and looking at it. So I've just been completely ignoring it. I have to-do lists on my phone that just like, it's like the idea of just doing the simplest task is so overwhelming to me. So I just put it off. But then of course, like putting off, you get that buildup of like, it becomes a bigger task in your mind. And then it's such a hurdle to get to it.
Yeah.
I've barely been painting because like just the idea of painting makes me feel tired. Like just, so I've basically just stopped like all of the plans I had for myself. I've just pressed the stop button because I can't right now. And I don't know when I'll click back on. Like I sometimes will feel like a little inkling of like, ooh, I feel like painting, and I'll I'll pursue that. But the moment is so fleeting.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe I'll do like one small little painting and then that's it. So I'm in this really weird space, and I've just decided to shift focus and start really just trying to do things that make me feel alive somehow.
Mm-hmm.
And I've realized that some of those, I think the best way to make myself feel alive is by doing things that are outside my comfort zone. Because again, like those things that might used to be my go-to happy things aren't doing anything for me right now. So I need like a bigger jolt of something. And so that's kind of where my focus has been, is just trying to figure out, like, identify those things that are outside my comfort zone that will kind of like it'll cause me anxiety because it's out of my comfort zone, but in a way that's productive versus destructive.
Yeah.
There's there's a difference, right? There's kind of like a good anxiety, absolutely. And then there's like a bad anxiety.
Yeah, it's like if you can reframe your anxiety as excitement, that's a good sign. If you're like, oh, I'm excited to do this new challenging thing that I've never done before. Like, that's very different than the anxiety of like, I feel like my world is falling apart and I don't know what to do, and I'm overwhelmed.
I've heard that before, but I still can't get behind that idea of like anxiety and excitement are the same thing. I'm like, they're not. I think it's okay to say like, I'm anxious about doing this cool new thing. But it's still like, I can't, excitement. It's not excitement that I feel. I'm not like, ooh, I can't wait. It's like, no, I can wait. I'm very scared to do this, but I'll be happy to have done it. So
yeah, I'm excited to be done this thing.
I guess I'm excited to try this thing, but I'm scared to.
Or you can be anxious and excited.
Yeah,
you can have like two. I'm
anxiously really excited.
Yeah, that's a good one. Yeah, I'm trying to embrace the idea of like two opposing things existing at the same time.
Yeah,
it's because I'm so much like, well, it's got to be one or the other. Like, no, actually, you can be two. You could be two things, two or more things. So yeah, I think, and maybe maybe it's not like, oh, I'm not anxious, I'm only excited. It's like I am both those things.
Yeah,
I contain multitudes. Yeah,
I think that's a really good point. And you can carry a negative and a positive emotion at the same time, like that.
Yeah, of course.
It happens all the time. I lost my train of thought.
So you're doing things to make yourself feel alive.
Yeah, essentially. And so right now, like, painting doesn't fall into that category at the moment. I'm hoping that'll change as I kind of like. I'm hoping by giving myself permission to just don't paint. Then
yeah,
I'm hoping that'll kind of help bring me back to the canvas. And I'm kind of at a point where, yeah, it would be really nice to be able to make a financially sustainable career out of my art. But I've also been kind of like thinking, and it's like, is it necessary? Do I need to do that? Is that the thing that I need to feel happy and content? And do I need to go down the route of self-employment? Like, is that really going to fire me up? You know? And I think I'm just kind of trying to live a bit more in the moment and be comfortable with, because I think a lot of us, I think we touched on this last episode. We wait for that, like that moment of happiness is in the future. And we need to do a bunch of stuff to get to that point. But then you get to that point and you get the things that you thought you wanted, and the goalpost has changed. And so you're in this constant state of getting to that point, and that's what your life becomes. And so I'm kind of challenging myself to actually live in the moment and challenge myself to kind of look at my life now. And this is the point I've been trying to get to. It's not how I thought it would be. It's not what I thought it would look like, but just kind of embracing the now as a period of contentment and stability and all of that stuff I was kind of seeking, and to just enjoy it. And I don't think we do that enough. I think we're constantly striving to do better and be more and do more. And I'm really, really burnt on that. And I just want to enjoy my life as it is. And I think it was distressing to me when I realized that, like, I haven't been.
Yeah.
And not that I haven't been doing activities that to an outside person would be enjoyable. Like I've been engaging in that stuff, but it hasn't been feeling like anything. And that was scary to me because my life is objectively very good.
Mm-hmm.
And the fact that I'm not feeling that is really, really, it's such a waste, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, I definitely hear where you're coming from. I would also suggest like giving yourself a pass, like for not being completely content with your life. I think that's pretty universal. So
oh yeah, like it's the society we live in. We've been conditioned, and I don't take any blame for it because it's like this is how all of us have been conditioned. I know it's a universal problem.
Mm-hmm.
Well, it's not, maybe not a universal problem. I think it's very much a problem in Canadian society, American society.
It's a first world problem.
It's a first world problem. And I think that's the thing that I've been reflecting on as well. It's just like the privilege we have and the fact that that we stress about the things we stress about, you know? And it's like, and I think it's kind of like a bit of a slap in the face to people who are really struggling if we're not enjoying what we have.
Mm.
You know, it's just like, it's kind of similar to when I listen to celebrities and they're complaining about like whatever they're complaining about. It's like, you guys have so much friggin' money and you're not enjoying your life, really? And it feels like such a slap in the face. And I think we have a duty to truly appreciate what we have and not to also to validate like the challenges that we're experiencing and what we don't have and the hardships we're experiencing. Like for sure, like those are also very, very valid, but you also have a duty to acknowledge the things that are really good.
Going well. Yeah.
Yeah. And going well.
I think it's like what we were saying before about holding two opposing emotions in yourself. You can, it's not either or, it's yes and, or both and. It's saying, I can acknowledge my pain or my struggles and validate them because I can't move through them otherwise. But at the same time, I can look to all the things that I have to appreciate and all the things I have going for me and all of that. And that's definitely a place I'm getting to. You want to know what's interesting is since I've started making these shifts just over the last week, I'm actually enjoying my life a lot more. I'm enjoying the present a lot more. Even though I'm not like there, I'm not where I want to be. There's a sort of satisfaction in, I don't know, I'm not even sure what it is. I think I'd have to reflect on it a bit more, but I feel like I actually feel excited to get up each day. And I'm not sure if that comes down to just like finally letting go of some of the baggage I was carrying, especially like baggage around like what I thought I should be doing. Right. And I'm just kind of letting that fall away. And I'm kind of just like, let's just figure it out. I'm sort of embracing the chaos and the uncertainty and the unknown. And I'm not sure why, but I will say I have felt way more content this past week than I have I couldn't even tell you when. Yeah. Maybe years. Yeah. And well, it's similar to me. I don't have the excitement to wake up so much, but that's because like most of the days I wake up and then I have to go to work. Yeah. But definitely like having just over the past couple of weeks, having kind of forced myself to get out of the house more and do things has helped me feel like I'm living a life again. Yeah. Versus just vegetating. It makes a big difference. And like circling back to what you were saying about just sort of embracing the chaos. And I think that's kind of what I'm sort of exploring a bit too. Mm-hmm. And I think that's why I haven't gone on Notion. Mm-hmm. So I'm kind of rejecting that idea of I don't want to plan things right now. I don't want to. I've gone down that road so many times where I find a new tool to use or a new system of organizing my brain and organizing my life and organizing my ideas and all of that stuff. And I just end up kind of spinning my wheels with like life planning or like business planning, but then action never happens. And then I end up going through that cycle of like then disappointment in myself for not actually moving things forward. And I just like, I don't want to go into that trap again. Mm-hmm. And because I think for me, planning is really fun. Yeah. I love doing that. I love the planning. I don't like the doing. And so I've just
And similar to like Cal Newport saying he can't go on social media, he has no impulse control or whatever, no willpower with that. Like he knows himself. It's a similar kind of thing. Like I can't go on Notion right now because I know I won't be able to control myself, stop myself from just like diving into the planning and spinning my wheels.
Yeah.
So
yeah. Well, it's great right now. Then you're doing stuff with like a bias towards action.
Yeah, exactly.
Because then if/when you return to Notion, it'll be with that in mind. Like, how can I use this tool to support me doing the action?
Yeah, exactly.
Which is my whole philosophy behind the planning and preparing portion of the Building a Musical Life process is that it's the principle. It's about intention. It's about intentionally directing your time and your intention and your energy, which are finite, and doing it in a way that supports you being able to do the work. Because the work is what matters. That's like if you took every other piece of the equation out, you'd be fine if you if you at least took action. But you want the action to be guided by the clarity of a vision, the intention of the planning and preparing, and then you can have the discipline of being able to take that action. But yeah, I think we do get it backwards where we feel, and it's exactly like you've been bringing up a lot, like the idea of like the unknown and how we really struggle with that. And that's definitely, and maybe this is something you mentioned before, where that's almost like what we try to do to remedy that. We're like, well, if I plan enough, then I'll know what's going to happen, and that'll like make me feel ready to do the thing. And it's like, no, you have to accept you're never going to feel ready. You're probably always going to feel a little bit scared. There's this creator I love named Elise Myers, and she had a little video that she did where she said, oh, people ask me like, how do I handle like my nerves? She's like, I just do it scared. Yeah. So that's sort of something I've been thinking a lot about, like, just do it scared. Just be afraid, be not ready, be anxious and excited. Yeah. And just like do the thing. And then, with that valuable data that you collect from actually taking the action, you can then structure your systems and your routines in a way that actually like you know what it takes to do the things. You're like, okay, I need this to help me support this. Right. If the things that you're doing get complicated enough to even warrant that, but in some cases, they won't. Right. It can be really simple. Yeah. Yeah. So I've just kind of been, and I've just been taking a step back too, and been thinking of like, what are the things in my life that, like, what are the things that I always kind of visualized myself doing as an adult that I'm not doing right now? Mm-hmm. So kind of similar to what you're doing. I'm not doing it in a super, I haven't written anything down but I've just been kind of reflecting on that. And so I signed up, like, as an example, like I've always been curious about acting. And so I signed up for like an intro acting course in the fall, nice. Which is like that's a huge jump outside my comfort zone. For sure. Yeah. Because it really challenges all those things that are hard for me. So like going into a situation and like not knowing what the end result's going to be, not knowing if I'm any good before I try. And then also like not even knowing, I imagine with acting, there's a lot of trying to see if things work. Like, talk about action first. Yeah. Like you have to read the line in a certain way to see if it lands or not. Like that, I can't prepare. The preparation is in the doing, right? It runs counter to how I like to function. Yeah. I prepare first and then I act. Maybe most of the time I don't. Yeah. So that'll be an interesting experience, but like just things like that, where it's like, now is the time. Like if there's something that I've been curious about trying, now is the time to do it. Yeah. I have free time after work and on weekends. And what else am I doing with that time? So, yeah. And I think there's been kind of a craving too for a bit more simplicity as well. And I think that's another reason why I've sort of like stayed off Notion. And I just there's been a shift in perspective. Like there's some social media influencers that I follow that I really admire. But recently, like in the past, I used to kind of feel like almost envious of them. I'm like, man, it must be so awesome. Like you have this following, like that you can build your business off of. But I look now and I'm like, God, there is like the amount of work that you have to do, and how I know how empty I feel after scrolling on social media. I just can't imagine how it must feel for them. And
my perspective has shifted from envy to pity.
Yeah.
And this sort of sadness that like you've built up this audience for yourself, but it's kind of like golden handcuffs in a way. You know what I mean? Like similar to what you were kind of saying about you had projected this image of yourself and then people started reflecting that back to you. And now you felt like you had to live up to that. Like it's similar kind of situation. And it just makes me feel like trapped just thinking about it.
I've heard that from some of the people who are I guess are influencers who have businesses that are based around social media where they find it so exhausting because they're having to produce all this content for their sponsors. And it's just, a lot of them have stepped back and they're like, I'm actually pulling back on the content, and they go the direction of trying to do other things for the business to build it out because they find it so draining. Yeah. Yeah. And that's definitely something I think a lot about, like, how do I want that to fit into my career, my life, because I know it is draining.
Yeah. I'm just realizing, like, I think the direction of my life, I think will go more towards the area of simplicity. So there's some, I think, dreams and goals and that I had that no longer reflect what I want.
Yeah.
So I think I just want a quieter life where I get to engage in the things I want to engage in when I want to engage in them. I don't really want any additional pressure. So anyways, that's kind of where I'm in this sort of weird place where I don't really know what I'll be doing next. But I'm just kind of decided to focus on, trying things that are new, trying things that are pushing me out of my comfort zone, and getting back to a place where I'm actually like feeling things other than stress and anxiety.
Yeah. I wholeheartedly support that. Like I said, I don't think I could be making these changes I am now if I hadn't taken all that time. I mean, I sort of like, I got dragged kicking and screaming through all of that internal work. Like it was really hard to have to put more time into that, but it was also really beneficial. Like when I did like really take it seriously and step back, it made a big difference. So I imagine you're gonna gain a lot of benefit from that, and just being able to feel things. I think that's so important, because we it's so easy to numb ourselves with busyness and with things and with goals and
and then and I think the challenge with sort of negative emotions is I do think they have a tendency to, if you're feeling them in abundance, they seep in and then they start to wreak havoc and stop you from being able to engage in the other kind of emotional states, which is, I think, has been slowly happening to me without me really being aware of it. And I suspect it's I mean, I think the COVID years took its toll on all of us in different ways.
Yeah.
And I don't think I'm alone in sort of feeling like the mental health repercussions of that whole, I was going to say decade. It feels like a decade. So I think I'm in that stage of kind of navigating all of that as well. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, that's true. I forget about that sometimes, because I was already at home a lot before, but I think it did some damage to me that I'm probably not even really fully understanding.
Well, we went to see a movie on Tuesday, so like we haven't done a weeknight movie night since before COVID. And I remember like coming home and feeling like, oh, like this feels like living. Like this is how I remember it felt to live a life. And then it was a very like kind of stark realization that like I haven't felt this for 5 years, really. Like I haven't. How depressing. Yeah. So in terms of like, I don't know. It's tricky because like we're recording an art podcast, and I don't know what my contributions are going to be like going forward, because I don't know how I'm going to be engaging with art going forward. I don't know in what capacity it might shift to just a hobby that I do privately, or it might not. Maybe it will shift into actually doing workshops, or maybe it will shift back into trying to sell and make something of it. I don't know. I'm in a really weird kind of space where I have no ideas, and I also have no desire to figure it out.
Yeah. And that's okay. I imagine there are so many artists who go through periods like that. And for some of them, they might just leave it behind. And I think I think what you'll be able to contribute is sharing your journey with other people, and just making them maybe not feel so alone if they are having like a bit of a, not to say that you're having a crisis, but for somebody who's maybe having a bit of like an artistic crisis where they're like, I don't feel like I want to do anything and I'm not sure and whatever.
Yeah.
It just to help them feel seen, I think is really important. And to counterbalance me where I have that endless devotion to music. I know that's really rare. And I think it's better to have that balance anyways. So yeah. And I think it's good to not put that pressure on yourself to figure it out and to be like, if you never figure it out, that's fine too. Because ultimately the stuff you're doing, like acting is artistic.
Yeah.
You're still doing artistic and creative things. Just because you're not engaging with visual art at the moment doesn't mean you aren't still creating.
Yeah.
And I'm curious to hear like all the stuff you try.
Yeah, I don't think there'll be a lot. Like I think acting classes is one of them, and I've been working out more too. And I want to work that into. Good. Yeah, I want to get physically in better shape, which I slowly am. I'm starting to feel like muscles in my legs where I didn't have muscle before. And yeah, I don't know beyond that. Like, I mean, music has always been something that I'm like, I might sort of try to play guitar and ukulele a little more regularly.
We have new strings in your guitar now, so
yeah, well, exactly, and I've positioned it so it's easier to get at in my studio. Before it was kind of like tucked in the corner; it was a little awkward to get at it, and yeah, I don't know. Beyond that, I don't know what other creative things I'll get into, but I mean, it'll always be part of my life, and I will get back to painting. Like I have no doubt about that because that's just me, right? Like I always go through the off periods and I get back into it. But it's what I do with it. I don't know. Yeah. That's the uncertain part.
Yeah. And this is if I were like coaching you, if I was doing Build a Musical Life, but beyond that to include artists, that's probably what I would say is like, you get to figure out where art fits into your life, but you don't have to, you don't have to get it all like planned right now. It's an evolving process and a conversation. It's about staying in conversation with how you're feeling and just being okay with wherever you are. So like when I talk about building a musical life, I'm not directing that exclusively to people who want to be professional musicians. It's anybody who cares enough about music to make it an important part of their lives. And if they really want to, if they feel called to do something with music in some way, if they feel that thing inside of them, that it doesn't matter what that looks like on the outside, it's just as valid as anybody else's approach.
Yeah.
So yeah, we'll definitely both have to do like an update episode. I don't know if we want to do like in 3 months or something. Just feels like a good number.
Good timeline.
All right. Do you have anything cool coming up over the next couple of weeks or something you're planning, or just really just continuing with what you were talking about?
Next couple of weeks. Well, so the acting classes start, I don't know, September 12th or something. If they happen, I think there needs to be a certain number of people who register, and I don't know if the number's been hit yet. I'll be really disappointed. This is something that I've been wanting to do for the past like year and a half, and every time registration comes around, I chicken out. And so this is the first time I actually like committed. So I'll be really disappointed if it doesn't happen. Other than that, no, I don't think there's anything specific that's coming up that I'm excited about. But I'm kind of excited for September to start. Oh, did we talk about the thing? Our new
God. Yeah, we'll talk.
That's what I'm excited about.
Okay, we'll talk about that after. I'll give you my little, although I also don't really have anything specific planned over the next couple of weeks aside from fixing my life. So, big goals there.
In 2 weeks.
After I said, I'm not going to put a deadline on it. No, I changed my mind. 2 weeks is how long it's going to take. That needs seems to reasonable. Take only 2 weeks. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah, really, that really is it for me. I have no expectations about exactly what I'm going to accomplish over the next couple of weeks, aside from just continuing in the direction I'm going, because that feels like the best route to go right now. Yeah. Maybe after a couple of weeks, I'll have a little bit more clarity, especially as far as like career stuff. Again, as I've been starting to clean stuff up, it is lifting that to the surface as being like something I really need to prioritize. And I do have some ideas about what I want to do. So I just need to start sitting down and chipping away at that. again, biased towards action to start doing things.
Nice.
But yeah, so we have a fun new addition to the podcast, and that is a monthly Spotify playlist where we're going to each share 10 songs that we're just really into at the moment. And we will be sharing a link. Do we want to do that just in the Discord?
Yeah.
Yeah. So you'll have to sign up for our Discord. But then once you are there, you will have unlocked our monthly playlist. So we're going to be starting with September. And I'll post that probably on the 1st of each month. So you'll be able to go and listen, and you can leave comments. I'll have a channel designated for the playlist. So if you want to just include maybe like some of your favorite songs, I don't know if we're going to do anything more with that. If we want to maybe do a quick rundown, maybe at the our last podcast of each month, maybe do a quick rundown of the songs there, just to kind of like explain what we like about them. So give people a chance to listen, and then we can just share those songs. And
I'm wondering, maybe we should share the link on Instagram too. I don't know. To be determined.
You know what I'll do is I'll put it in the show notes.
Oh, that makes sense. Oh, that's smart. Yeah,
so I'll do
that.
So I'll put the link in the show notes, and so yeah, it'll be. So I guess actually you guys will get it early. So this episode goes up in a couple of days at the end of August. So yeah, you'll get it.
But you're not allowed to listen until the 1st of September.
Yeah.
We're trusting you.
I don't. Yeah, it's like Christmas. Like when you get a Christmas gift sent in the mail early,
you have to wait.
You're like, you have to wait until Christmas. You're like,
or your birthday. Birthday's even worse.
Yeah. Like birthday doesn't matter. Just let me open it now. Actually, I usually am allowed to open my presents whenever I want. So
that was my favorite thing about becoming an adult.
Yeah.
Realizing, I say that as if it happened like overnight. One day I woke up and I was an adult. But, receiving a birthday card in the mail like 3 days before my birthday and realizing I actually can choose to open it now if I want to. And guess what I choose to do?
You choose to wait?
I choose to open it now.
Oh, okay. Thought yours was going to be like a twist where you're like, actually,
it depends.
I have a lot of self-restraint.
Sometimes I do wait, but sometimes I open it right away.
Yeah, but you all have to wait, apparently. So,
sorry.
Yeah, I'll post a link in the show notes for the last episode of each month, and that playlist will be for the start of the next month. And then the last episode of the month will talk about that month's playlist, and then we'll also post up the playlist for the next month, if that makes sense. You'll see.
We'll figure it out.
We'll figure it out. But then if you want to discuss the episode, you can join our Discord, or not the episode. Well, you can discuss the episodes there too. But if you want to discuss the playlist, share some of your favorite songs, then you can do that. Maybe at some point we'll also do like a Discord playlist where we can leave it open for people to add stuff.
Oh, that'd be fun.
Yeah.
Yeah, that would be fun.
But we need more people on our Discord, so please join the Discord. Yeah, so I think that's it. So thank you, everybody, for listening. You can send questions and comments to streamofartpodcast@gmail.com. You can follow us on Instagram. We are at streamofartpodcast. You can follow us.
We're very active on Instagram.
Not at all active. I'm going to be changing that. That is something that definitely has to change because I want us to reach people.
All right, if you say so.
Apparently Instagram is like the place to do that. So.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
We'll see. But yes, I'm going to, at some point... But you can follow us on Instagram anyways. And, again, wait with bated breath for our next post. And you can follow us each individually on Instagram as well. The links are in the show notes. And join our Discord. There we go. Links in the show notes. And listen to our playlist. The link is also in the show notes. I think that's it. So yeah. Have a great couple of weeks, everyone, and we will see you in the next episode. Bye.
Bye.